Hey Nintendo fans and collectors! Lithium here from my channel Nintendo Collecting. On this week's episode of Question Lithium, I answer your questions about finances, including how much I actually spent to obtain this entire collection. What one item did I spend the most on to add to my collection? And how much do I think my entire collection is worth? Other questions include, how do I actually save up money, and snipe auctions, and lastly, what's the farthest I've ever traveled in order to add something to my collection? Let's press start. This week's first question is from Stars for Eyes 101. How much do you think your whole collection cost? Estimate, and what was the most expensive item in your collection? This is definitely another one of those most popular questions I see all the time on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. How much have I invested into my collection? How much do I think my collection is worth? And what's the most expensive item I ever got for my collection? Well, I'm going to be a little creative with my answer, but first I'm going to talk about finances, and then I'm actually also going to talk about time, because I've invested a lot of time into this collection, which I just want to speak about as well. But let's get to the fun stuff, the finances part. One of my earliest collecting tips, I said to try and keep a database of your entire collection, and I still do so with Microsoft Excel. While I'm keeping a database of my collection, I'm adding in almost all the totals of what I've spent for everything. So I have a really good idea of what I've spent on my collection. Now, first and foremost, I can let you know that I've probably spent about $10,000 on my collection. That's a crazy number. That's so much money. But I'm only in the red, or in the hole, probably about $2,500. I'm really smart with collecting, and I'm trying to break even, and that's why I started Collecting Tips 101, basically to remind myself and to try and help others, to try and break even with collecting and to try and really just be intelligent while you collect. So what I've been doing is I've been buying in lots, I keep the games I want, and then I sell off what I don't need. And that's one way to kind of bring down that number of $10,000 on all the video games that I've bought throughout my life. That's a ton of money. The other way that I kind of reduced that number of 10,000 was by being creative. And being creative has a lot of different things to take into account, but one of the things that I've always been doing, when by always I mean for over 5-7 years, is creating tables and selling them. Like this NES coffee table, and like this Super Mario Bros. 3 beer pong and flip cup table. So that's another way I bring down my cost. And the last way is really, honestly, just doing YouTube videos. I think anyone can start up a YouTube channel, anyone can partner their channel, and if you have good content that people like, you can start monetizing it and make a little bit of money on it. So thank you so much for supporting me, because right now, a lot of you are actually helping me grow my channel and to help me actually grow my collection too. And thank you, that's absolutely tremendous, that's awesome. Now to the question, how much do I think my collection is actually worth? Oh dear, the big one. Now this really depends on the appraiser who's looking at the collection, because I usually lowball everything. I don't think things are worth what they're supposed to be worth, and I also don't want to really spend full price. That's usually what I'm doing because I'm a collector, trying to get a good deal. But I'm $2,500 in the hole, as I said, and I would think my collection's worth about 10 times that, probably around $25,000, maybe more, maybe less, I'm not sure. I could probably go through every item and get an exact number for you, but I ballparked it and I got to about $25,000, a little bit higher than that. And that's crazy. That's almost a down payment for a house. I realize that, but I'm keeping all these items for life. I don't want to sell them. I want to play them and enjoy them with my wife eventually, with my kids, and with my friends. So it's a really good time for me. Now I want to answer the question of how much time I spend on everything. Well, my collection, I'm going to look at time-wise only for collecting. Obviously, if I'm spending a lot of time playing video games every day, I'm not going to include that in these numbers. So right now, I'm probably spending half an hour to an hour every single day to collecting. That number goes up in the summer with garage sales, and certain times of the year, like around Christmas, or maybe after Christmas, maybe when I have some extra money, that number probably goes up a little bit as well. But on average, I'm probably spending an hour a day, just over 300 hours a year, and I've probably spent almost 2,000 hours of my lifetime building this collection. I'm dedicated to it. I love doing it. I absolutely love Nintendo. Obviously, I'm a fanboy, and I love playing video games. And really, sharing it with my friends is tremendous. Be proud of what you do, love what you do, and you can just always have a great time with it. Next, what is the most expensive item in my entire collection? What of all of these items did I spend the most on? And the answer might actually surprise you. Because I'm always after a really good deal, I'm usually patient for weeks, months, or years to try and find an item. So even when something, for example the Just Go console, might cost $1,000 right now, I paid a fraction of that much. I paid a tenth of that much, because I'm really patient usually. The item though that I spent the most on in this entire collection is, bum-ba-da-bum, it's actually the Wii U console. The deluxe console that I bought at launch and the Zelda Wind Waker set, those are the most I've ever spent, and that was over $300 on those consoles. Whenever something is used, it usually decreases in value. So that's really why I think these are the most expensive I've ever bought. Now, no other item in my entire collection have I ever spent more than $300 on. What came close was the Char's customized box Nintendo GameCube, and even the Wavebird for Char as well. But all the other items in my collection, no matter how rare, no matter how expensive they may be, I never spent over $300 on anything other than the Wii U. In summary, I've probably spent about 2,000 hours collecting. I'm $2,500 in the hole, but I probably spent around $10,000. My collection, I would think maybe is worth around $25,000. Ugh, that's crazy to think of. And the most expensive item I ever bought was a brand new Nintendo Wii U. Thank you very much for your question. Our next question is from Proggish. How do you manage to save money or snipe the auctions on these things? How do I snipe items? How do I save up money to actually build up my collection? Well, I can tell you, first of all, usually what I do is I do set aside some money that I am making. Now, all the money that I make from selling custom-made tables, like this one here from my Nintendo NES coffee table, all of that money, including all the money I really do make buying games in lots, selling off what I don't need, and also, honestly, I'm sorry to tell you this, any money I make from YouTube. All of that money usually goes back into my collection. So right now that is the only money I'm spending on my collection because I don't want to spend any of my own money. I'm trying to save up to basically buy a house. I'm trying to move out of this place to get my own place and to build my own Nintendo room elsewhere, which would be actually really cool. I'm excited to do that. So I save up money by just being creative, by making videos, by making items and selling them, and also buying in lots and selling off what I don't need. Now, if you are not able to do some of those things, what I suggest you do is basically just take your entire budget. Take how much you make every month, your income. If you are young, maybe you're tutoring, maybe you have a part-time job, and if you have a full-time job, then you obviously have a lot more to pull from. So what I do is I basically set aside, or what I would suggest doing, is set aside maybe 10% of your budget, 5% of your budget, and use that towards collecting. Now, if that's only $10 a week, maybe every month you could be buying a really cool retro game or even a brand new game to add to your collection. It might be $50 a week. Well, $50 a week is actually quite a bit. $50 a week is a brand new game every single week, and you can build up a collection pretty quickly. Or you could buy several used games or maybe even a console. If you're really smart with your money and you budget well and you watch where everything's going, it's not that difficult to really build up a collection like this. Just keep in mind, I've been collecting for nearly a decade, and I've actually had a lot of this stuff ever since I was a kid, in terms of the N64 games, GameCube games, and the Wii games I was collecting as I went on. How do I snipe these things? Well, to me, honestly, when I do eBay hunting, I am not that successful in all of my eBay bids. I probably only win, and this number is low, I might win about 10% of the things I bid on. When I'm bidding on items, I usually bid at the very last minute. Sometimes just to remind myself, I bid a lot earlier. But generally, I bid yes in the last seconds, and I just try and snipe things if I can and if the auction's really low, but usually you do see them doubling in the last minute. I'm sometimes a nighthawk, sometimes I wake up really late at night. Then I usually kind of go on eBay and see if any of my auctions are ending, and if the auction is ending late at night, and if it's actually listed in North America, then I am more likely to have less competition and to do well with that auction. So sometimes I'm a nighthawk, and that's where I tend to win a lot of my auctions. If it's on a weekend, a lot of people are around, a lot of people are bidding on things, and it's much harder to win some rare items. Now, I do not like doing buy it now if I can help it, because buy it now is just so expensive and you have to spend so much money on items when you use buy it now, generally, unless you find a great deal. When I do find a great deal, I'm not hesitant to pounce. I usually have some sort of a fund as a backup just to buy those items when I finally see them, and when I finally actually find something that I really want to add to my Nintendo collection. So essentially, how do I save up money? I'm personally creative. I try to be creative. I try to fund my collection, and I've tried to keep it self-sufficient. So I'm not actually going in the red even deeper from my own money, especially because I'm trying to move out. So right now, I'm probably spending something like $150 to $300 depending on the month. And that's per month on my collection, which can be one really awesome console, or it could be some controllers or games or walkthroughs or guides or posters or any other accessories to add to my Nintendo room, really whatever I see fit. And how do I snipe auctions? I rarely win them. I might win only 10% of the time, and it's only when it's a really good deal will I actually try and win them. It's usually late at night, or it's usually just when I'm getting really lucky. If you're patient, persistent, and you try hard enough, eventually you're going to win some, and you're going to find some great deals. Thank you very much for your question. Our last question is from Emilio Taylor. What was the most you have spent traveling to get an item? Very unique question. I like that one. The total I have spent traveling. Again, I'm going to answer this in terms of cost and in terms of time. When I started to be really serious about collecting, I already had a license, I could drive around, and I think I was basically in university for the majority of the time that I was collecting. Back then anyways. Now I'm actually in a career. Crazy how time changes and everything's flying by. But when I was in university, I was on Kijiji, which is Kijiji, I get asked it all the time, and on Craigslist, and I was always searching for deals, obviously after I was done my homework and assignments. I found one Nintendo 64 collection, and the person didn't really seem like they knew what it was. They weren't really sure how much they should basically be selling it for. A lot of the items that I saw in the pictures were in really nice shape. I remember these boxes, and these weren't all of them, were part of what was there. So this Banjo-Tooie box is in almost pristine condition. It's very, very good shape. It's amazing. It's one of the best boxes I probably have. Definitely seemed like it was from another collector or someone who held onto it ever since they were growing up or bought it. When I saw some controller boxes, I really knew that this was a great collection, because finding things in the box, especially kind of quote-unquote in the wild, is really hard to do, and it's kind of rare. And he had this box here, and this box is not one that I would really expect to ever see out in the wild, as I said, or while searching Kijiji. So I messaged her, it was a girl, and I was pretty excited because I saw there was probably about 10 boxed games, 2 box controllers, and a bunch of box manuals, but I don't remember what the other ones were actually at this time anymore. It's been so long. It's probably been like 6 years. Essentially, I messaged them, and I said I could come today, I could come right now, and I looked at how big the collection was, and I said, how about 60 bucks? And amazingly, they were just like, I'm talking to someone else, let me see, and then they emailed me back a few minutes later and said, sure. I left like that moment. And here's the kicker. This deal was over an hour away from where I was living. That's a far drive. But I was so into getting all those items, because a lot of them I needed, that I was willing to do it. So that drive was an hour and 15 minutes one way. So 2.5 hours total I drove, and it was 100% worth it in this case because I saw pictures, I knew what I was getting, I knew I was only spending $60 for something back then that was probably worth to me about $150 or more, which is amazing. It's exceptional. For 10 boxed games complete, some manuals, 2 box controllers, might have been more than 150 at the time. And how much did that cost me in gas money? Because I know some of you maybe would take public transportation if you're in a big city, or other means of getting to places that would cost a lot of money. The gas money for that was probably something like $20. I'm not really positive how much it was. So spending $20 to get $60 worth of stuff, even though it was worth way more, and it was 2.5 hours of my time, that drive home was amazing because I knew I got an absolutely amazing score of some great N64 games in amazing condition that just were outstanding. And this Mario Party one, to this day, I remember looking at this going in my car because basically I got out of there as fast as possible. I do remember what she said, where the collection came from, and she said this, and I quote her, I think, "It was my dad's collection. I know he was crazy." Well, call me crazy, but I absolutely love having this collection, or his collection, as part of my own today. Thank you very much for your question. It was very unique. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Question Lithium. If you happen to have any questions for me for future episodes, be sure to follow me on Twitter at CollectNintendo and add the hashtag QLithium. If you haven't seen my new video about collecting news for the Peach and Yoshi remotes, feel free to click on that link in the top right-hand corner right now. Also, feel free to fill that like bucket, follow me on Facebook and on Twitter, and remember, as always, go collect 'em all.